Hello and welcome to Bendy, a podcast about being flexible in all of the ways that means. Thanks for joining us. My name is Andy Young, and I'm one of your rhetorical, expressive hosts. Joining me, as always, is our other rhetorical and expressive host, Beth Martin. Beth, a pleasure as always. What's crack?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Perhaps. I heard it.
So
I feel like I've used rhetorical before. I can't remember, but don't know, don't care.
true.
Here we are.
Do we just want to start the episode and let people know that you have a man cold? You have a cold,
Yeah, so I'm
i.e., man cold?
Essentially I'm working with a disability this week, guys, so I
It's
really go
true.
easy on me. I'm an invalid, and
He's two steps
so
away
you
from.
know, if you have any comments about this episode and how I'm doing, make them be about how strong I've been and how proud you are of me, if possible.
You're continuing on.
Yeah, continuing on, soldiering on through this horrible situation.
I'm cracking up because you made a mistake. And then you were
Uh-huh.
like, don't forget I have a cold. And I'm
I
like, oh my
did. I know, Beth. Come on.
God.
Right? A bit of
You're
sympathy
right.
here.
You're right. Oh my, I'm just so impressed
Thank
with the
you.
valor. Yeah.
And like that's the sort of attitude I need from the fans as well this week. Okay. I just need your sympathy, your support.
Sorry. This is funnier than it needs to be. It's not
uh
funnier. It's not funnier. Funny in the way, there's no way I can come back from that. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, it's fair enough. That's I
Just
understand.
fucked it up.
I understand. It's just very,
Um,
very messed up, Beth, is what it is.
yes, yes, yes. It's terrible. Fans, if you want to belittle and make me feel bad about
Yeah,
this is
teasing
fine.
poor Andy.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Um, what's the crack? So trying to I just realized that I've got like mere weeks before I head to the UK, so I'm trying to buy
Hmm.
clothes
Oh yeah, of course.
in Southern California.
Oh yeah, for the perfect place to shop for clothes for Ireland.
Quite.
I need to tell you about the weather today, right? It has went from sunny and quite warm to hail, and I think a little fleck of snow in the air. It's an
Okay.
insane day of weather, truly. So yeah,
Okay.
so dress for all climates apart from
Uh-huh.
uh, very hot climates.
Okay, perfect. It's like the time that we yeah, okay.
Hmm.
And also like I'm trying to pack as like little as possible.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So that's a challenge. The challenge of trying to pack properly for a country that has multiple weather fronts in one day.
mhm.
Is that because we talked before about Oregon having similar weather to
It's
Ireland in a
exactly the
lot of
same.
ways? So like
I
would
mean, I
it be
haven't been to Ireland, but
yeah.
it would be like
But
like April, May is like pours and then it's
yeah,
sunny and then it's like the hail and
yeah.
it might yeah, like
Within minutes
March.
though, like would that happen? Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
It's very common.
We're just like uh, and in Oregon it rains so much people don't even like you can tell if someone's not local to the
Yeah,
state to the area. Like there are desert parts of Oregon, so I'm not trying to like say that all of Oregon is rainy, but
yeah,
like we gave up on umbrellas. It's like
yeah,
what why bother? And you
yeah,
just kind of slog through miserably
yeah.
in the rain because just have a
That
good windbreaker and
yeah. I
call it
think that
good.
that would be our experience too. And I mean, I think that like a umbrella because it's very windy here as well. Umbrellas are just kind of a waste of time.
Yeah, same.
They'll be destroyed in minutes,
Yep,
you know.
yep, yep, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think I'm gonna be fine,
Yeah.
and like I'm just gonna layer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
But I
Nice.
got
I
a
like
new
it.
coat,
Hmm.
and my old one, I was like, how long have I had this? Because Mike was like, I think you need a new coat. This one looks like dog shit. And he was like, you've had it for 20 years. And I was like, really?
Well, good for you.
Yeah. So he's like, let's go to REI. Do you guys have REI?
No.
It's recreation and something, something.
Okay.
Uh, Started in Washington State, I believe. And it's like really popular on the West Coast.
Oh, I recognize this brand. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Hmm.
So went there, got a coat. It's just like, it's cost prohibitive because it's like it was on clearance
Hmm.
for like $290 or something.
Yikes.
I know. And it's like, I don't want to spend $350 on a coat.
I know. But like, I mean, I suppose the way I'm looking
That's a
at it,
ticket somewhere.
if it lasts 20 years,
That's what Mike was like, but cost per wear.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, right. So,
Yeah.
OJ Simpson died.
Yeah. We were talking about this before the pod.
It's just so weird. It's so weird. It's so weird
Yeah.
because I remember it's like when our like in America, like our parents are always like, "Oh, I know exactly where I was when Kennedy was assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
We found out
Mm-hmm.
that he died." And it's like that for like 9/11 for us
Uh-huh.
and OJ Simpson's
Oh, his car ch
trial,
and the car
the
chase.
car chase
Yeah.
and the trial outcome announcement.
Yeah.
So it's like I totally remember watching the car chase and just being like,
This
okay,
is
so we got to back up as to why we're even
yeah.
talking about this. So Andy's wearing a sweater that says,
It says Nordberg on it. This is the brand, and if anybody knows what the connection here is Nordberg was the name of his character in the Naked Gun movies.
and I love
Uh,
that character's name. It's just so
I
fun to say.
I have to say, whenever I like saw this, I was like, "This is a nice top," and then like seeing it was Nordberg and me making that connection, it just kind of pushed it over the edge to me because of like how ridiculous it is. Because it is
Right.
kind of looks like a kind of like I think it's got like a Danish flag on the sleeve, so I'm sure it is not connected to him in any way whatsoever. But yeah, you know, it was the connection that made me chuckle a little.
Hmm. So I remember being in band class
Hmm.
freshman year. I think Mike was there. Uh, and I remember like betting the guy next to me, like, on the outcome, and it was like 10 cents or something.
I like
And
it.
I was like, yeah, I was like, he's gonna be found innocent. He's like, he's gonna be found guilty. And like it was just like it was like a culture thing
Yeah,
too. It was all, that was a really hard period in American history in general. And
yeah,
that was just kind of like the culmination. We have these periods where like things are really charged, and that was a time. And so just to have him pass away with it, and like the link to like the story never died
yeah,
because the Kardashian tie, because
yep,
the Kardashians' father was one of his attorneys.
yep.
And then they made it into a whole
They
miniseries
did.
with like David Schwimmer from Friends. And
Hmm.
so it's just like it's just weird
It's
to not have him like around
yeah,
making
because
weird headlines.
didn't it really is, and then didn't he eventually end
Weird
up
and
going
terrible headlines.
to
He went to
jail for some
prison.
other kind of crazy stuff,
Yeah.
like shaking down some guy that had some of his old memorabilia or gear. It's all like his he is such a like wild history, and like it's kind of, and I think that we don't really fully understand it here, but I know that he was like almost completely beloved in the US, like before the trial and before the alleged murders and whatnot. And like we knew him from Naked Gun, and he was great in those. He was really
Yeah.
good. And
Yeah.
then for what a complete 180 in terms of his public opinion, in terms of the direction his life took, it was. And I've seen people even talk about, because I know it's a thing that's happened a lot in recent sort of discussions around American football, in terms of these guys taking injuries to the head that
Yeah.
affect their
It's
lives
called
going forwards. What's it called again?
it's called CTE.
CTE. And there's been talk about whether he might have been affected by that. And it's I don't know. It's like, horrible in terms, certainly in terms of like what's happened to some of the people in his life, but kind of fascinating as well.
There was discussion, and I have to see where it ended up, but there was like, oh, they're gonna donate his brain and find out, you know, if there's CTE, but I think the family decided not to. I have to see where it
Okay,
landed, but
okay.
yeah. So uh it's just I don't know how else to say it. It's such an odd
It is.
part of American history. It's such an odd, it's just like things that um he was so beloved. He was so beloved.
Yeah.
He was so really like, I think more Caucasian people were
Mm,
his fans, and like everyone's like, oh, he bridged like the racial divide and da da.
interesting.
So it's just charged.
It
You can
is.
hear
It
that.
is. So
We
no.
got a house. We got to Okay. This is my other thing.
Uh-huh.
I'm like OJ Simpson, and then I'm gonna zing you in a
Hard
totally
pivot.
different direction.
Uh-huh.
We got a landline phone.
Ooh. Is
So
it
like
ringing? Okay.
Well, yeah. So now I'm getting all these spam calls, but trying to teach my children how to use it to call us. And it has like, I got one for like elderly people where it has the big buttons where you can just put a face and it's like
I
speed
love it.
dial,
Uh-huh.
right? And they don't know what a dial tone is.
Wow.
So they're
Uh-huh.
trying to like dial it, and I'm like, no, no, it's the wrong tone. Like when it goes beep, 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 that's
Yep.
like you're not connected to the line. When it's like beep, and they're like looking at me like I'm crazy. So it's just like a totally, they're like, well, how do I know? Like, how do I know when it's okay to like, how do I call 911? And
Yeah.
how do I know what the tone, if the tone is right? And so we've been practicing, and they're like, well, how do we know if it's you when you call? And I'm like, you don't. You just pick up the phone and say hello. And they're like, well, what if it's not you? What do we do? And so it's just, it's so interesting,
Wow.
the things that we take for granted, because we're elderly people in our
It's
mid
true.
40s.
That's true.
But it's just
It's
like the things that were common knowledge. And we were like looking at phones on Amazon. And I was like, should we get a rotary phone? Or like they actually had like the red phone,
I think
that
and
like
uh,
that we
uh,
could,
oh yeah.
the president has, like the
Yes.
red phone, right? I was like, should we get one of those?
The next thing to do would be to give them either a VHS or a cassette tape and be like, what's this? Figure this out. It's,
We do have a car that takes tapes, so they do
oh
know what
wow.
tapes
Okay,
are.
they do. Okay. Nice. I love it.
Uh, VHS, they would have no idea.
No. I,
They would have no idea.
it's been so long since I've even seen a VHS. It'll probably look so odd to me when I do actually see one. Well, if I see one again, you know. But yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I have one because I essentially have my phone on silent at all times,
So do I.
always. And
So do
it's
I.
like which I think is the smart move in this day and age. Honestly, it's a phone is just a friggin' portal into hell. Honestly, I mean, like there's useful stuff on it, but it's so much of it's grim. Um, but so like if there's an actual emergency, my parents know to call me on that number. They can always get hold of me on there. But the thing is that like I don't even answer that phone a lot of the time. I mean, I can see the number on it. If I see it's my parents call and I'll pick it up. But like, and by and large, when I do, it's like my dad going, can I pick up that box that we've been talking? Like, can I pick it up in the next 15 minutes? I'm like, no, I'm leaving the house. Oh, I need it, but I need it now. And I'm like, so it's like not something that is urgent, but they've decided to make it into an urgent issue. So
Yeah.
fun.
Everyone's definition of urgent is very
Oh,
different.
so true. So true. But
What's
yeah,
the crack with you?
really very little. I have two things. I mean, I saw
Do you want to,
uh,
oh, the new one?
Godzilla X Kong. Yes.
Is this the one where Godzilla has like the
The Power
robotic
Fist,
arm?
yes. So like it's so funny to me. So it's not great, honestly. It was fine. I mean, there was some fun action stuff in it. At one point, my favorite bit was Godzilla does a suplex and King Kong, which is fucking awesome. On
It's a wrestling move.
onto a pyramid actually, which is pretty awesome.
Like in Egypt?
Yes,
Heck
it
yeah.
is
If you're
ludicrous.
gonna do one
You know what I
and you
mean?
get to like, you know, it's
Um,
either like Eiffel Tower,
yes.
pyramid. That's basically
I
it.
mean, like, I kind of want King Kong to like, rip the Eiffel Tower up, and like throw it through a monster or something like that. That would be kind of awesome. But it was. I mean, like, it's completely ridiculous. It was fun, and there was some fun stuff in it, but it was essentially kind of ludicrous. But like, I had been thinking about it afterwards, and in theory, these are supposed to be through lines from the Godzilla movie, the reboot, like back what about 15 years or so ago, and that movie was so kind of serious and somber. And now you've got like Godzilla getting a power glove so he can like, punch some other monster, it's so crazy. But like
They have to team up.
and but like Dan Stevens is in it and he's awesome. And
They got such a good
they
cast.
did. I mean, I like Rebecca Hall as well. There's
I
tons of
love her
people I like.
too. Yeah.
So I mean it's fine. But like it just made me remember how incredible Godzilla minus is it Godzilla minus one? Yes, Godzilla minus one, which was the Japanese one that came out just before Christmas, which is just sensational from beginning to end. I can't talk enough about how good that movie is. It's just, I mean, like I went in hearing it was good, and it really kind of blew me away. But yeah, it's one to watch rather than that movie, honestly.
Have you
Um,
ever looked at the list of Godzilla movies that have been made?
oh, there's so
It's
many.
like there's so many because it's like you know, like for Marvel movies, like how do I watch them in order? And
I know.
I went down the wormhole. Um, Charlie's terrified of Godzilla. Harper loves Godzilla.
Hmm.
So I tried to find like one that was sort of like palatable for both of
Yeah.
them. And it ended up there was like a tsunami and he started screaming and like ran out of the
Oh, okay.
room.
Oh
He's very
no.
afraid of natural disaster stuff. So, and anytime an animal dies, which
Yeah,
like I agree with,
that's sweet.
the second
Hmm.
one. So Avatar 2 was not a
Oh
win.
no.
Uh,
Yeah.
so anyways,
I was
I
gonna say
forgot my
anything with
point.
like Godzuki in there, the little like mini Godzilla might be nice, but I don't even know. It's been so long since I've seen any of those films, so
Yeah,
I couldn't say whether they don't take a hard like turn into something horrifying. Who
right.
knows?
Right.
The other thing was just because I haven't been doing like I'm kind of saving. Obviously, Beth's coming in May, and I've got other stuff happening in May, so I'm kind of saving for May. Not been doing much, but I did sign up for a marathon hike. So we're essentially doing the distance of a marathon in one day, hiking along the
Oh,
coastline of. So people, from Northern Ireland or maybe the UK will know it's from Coleraine and essentially along the coastline to about Giant's Causeway sort of direction. But I think the route is supposed to take it to be about 8 or 9 hours of walking.
wow.
So yeah. And like, don't get me wrong, it's still my preference over a running marathon any day of the week.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
but I'm quite that's not until like 22nd of June. So yeah, I'm looking
So
forward
do
to
you have
that.
to like start like practicing?
I feel like I do enough walking that it won't be a problem. And I've
You're
definitely
pretty
walked.
active.
Yeah, I walk enough, and I've walked those distances before. I probably will do a little bit. I'll probably get my distances up a little bit in the lead up to it, but I really don't think it should give me too many problems. So yeah, but I'm just gonna have to like start getting sponsorship and things like that now.
I saw that and I need to sponsor you.
I am
I
going to do.
just
I'm going to
throw
do a
the link.
more
Yeah.
active sponsorship drive, and my technique for that is I've already taken a picture of Sasha sleeping upside down with her legs in the air, and I'm going to say
Yes.
Sleepy Sasha wants you to sponsor Andy, and that'll get
That
the
will.
sponsors rolling,
That will.
you
It's
know.
true. What
So
is the sponsorship going towards?
Macmillan Cancer Research, so they're
Okay.
a cancer research a UK based company that does cancer research. So yeah,
Okay.
so that's worthwhile.
Great.
And
Yeah.
especially because my mom went through some cancer stuff last year, it's particularly relevant
Yes.
to me,
Yes.
and it's always a good charity to support, I think.
Agreed. So if
So yeah,
anyone's interested,
yeah, let me know.
when is
All right,
it?
22nd of June. I will
22nd of June.
post the link. I mean, we'll probably put the link on our socials maybe somewhere at some point,
Yeah,
maybe.
I can totally do that.
Yeah,
I think it's a good idea.
yeah, yeah.
Good.
So we'll do that. But yeah, but that's all I
And
have.
so last week you told people you were going to give up weed. Do
Uh-huh. Oh yeah,
you
I
want to
should
give
talk about
it
that.
an update?
Yeah, so I've done it for a week. I mean, like, it's only a week's past, but when we were talking about this a little bit ahead of time, I feel like, I am prone to certain amounts of paranoia and things like that anyway, but I certainly haven't felt the depths of it over the past week. As I say, it's only been a week, so it's too early to say anything for sure, but I definitely feel the positive effects of it already. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to continue monitoring things. Obviously, there's been a pretty dramatic change in that I have a cold now, so
Right, right.
it's hard to get a clear reading on that. And obviously, that has been a really traumatic experience over the past few days. Uh, but yeah, mostly a positive change so far. Let's see how it goes.
Okay. Proud of you.
Thank you.
Not because you're like stopping weed, but just because like you're making efforts to try and figure out kind of how to
Yeah.
balance your
The other thing in that regard, I should say is thank you for starting. But is we talked about this briefly, is that I had like bloods drawn to
Mhm.
test like hormone levels and like bloods and whatnot, and everything came back a-okay within tolerable levels, or within normal levels. So it's good news. I also like, so much of this process has been me looking for like a smoking gun cause for it. I think that is
Yeah.
common to a lot of people's
Yeah.
mental health journeys. So that I didn't find that there, but also it is reassuring to know that there's nothing, physically going on in those areas anyway. So
Yeah.
So yeah,
Having
mostly positive.
found out, yeah, having had abnormal stuff in
Yeah,
those areas, it's always like, oh, like on the one hand, it's like, okay, I'm not like, there's not something that like it's a tangible thing.
yeah.
Like now I know what to deal with in this area, but then it opens up a whole like, okay, but now how do we
How do we go from
get
there?
this area? Yeah, like how do we get you stable in this area? And it's always trial and error. And it's been like literally years of trial and error
Yeah,
for me. So I'm glad that your stuff came back.
yeah.
It's
No,
funny,
so am I.
tolerable is not normal here. It's like I'm
Yeah.
like tolerable, but
Uh,
yeah.
they're like, I mean, he was like, "Oh, you see your hormone blood levels, so they're high, but they're within the normal range." And I'm like, "Oh yeah." For my testosterone that was, and I was like,
Okay.
"Okay, sweet." I was like, "Ladies, I am high
Your
normal
ego's like
testosterone."
tiny claps.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so it was good, but like, and then he came back. The last one he gave me was he said, "So your blood sugars," and I was like, "Oh no, here we go." These are probably going to be disasters because the amount of sugar I consume. And he's like, "Nope, they're good too." And I was like, "Yes." So a relief, a relief.
You know, you shouldn't eat sugar if you have a cold. I
Uh,
just made that up. I'm kidding.
mm,
I'm
that
kidding. I'm kidding.
that's based on my research. I saw something very different. Yeah.
We forgot to name our topic.
Oh, we did forget to say I was thinking about calling it loving language.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
I do love language.
Yes. So do I. Do we have anything? Do I have any current stuff? I feel
Oh
like
my God, I have crack.
okay, get something quick because like I feel like we're like,
We have
yeah,
been blabbing.
we haven't blabbed, but
Okay,
it's good.
so that you'll be surprised to find out. I don't
Hmm.
think it's a listener, it's just someone that like looks at our stuff on YouTube. They were pretty upset that we don't like Conor McGregor.
He is so polarizing a figure,
Apparently, and
Yeah.
someone else was like, yeah. Um, so I have to read the quote.
Uh-huh.
This person disagreed. They said he was the best part of the movie, meaning Roadhouse.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Everyone I've spoken to loved him in the movie.
Hmm.
He could be the next Marvel villain. So
Okay.
Conor McGregor, I'm glad you're a listener.
Yeah, Connor. Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for your support.
Super glad you're here.
Hmm.
Go keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Yep. As long as it isn't the bad stuff.
Right.
Just keep it the movies, keep it the octagon, Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's I remember years ago when I was still like writing, I did like video game reviews for like a website many years
Uh-huh.
ago,
Oh, fun.
and there was I reviewed a skating game and I like um trash talk Bam Margera a little bit, and
Oh.
people really came for me over that. It was very eye-opening. Like I didn't really go in at him, but it was like one sentence and people were like, "Hey, Bam's amazing." Like I think it's just odd for me because there's nobody like I'm so passionate about. There's no like I don't know these people. There's people I like, celebrities I like and whatnot, but I don't really know them so much that I'd be like angry if somebody was like attack them online somewhere. But
Yeah, like their early BIMs or like I can see why people came. I was
yeah,
friends with like skater dudes who were like, like the original like videos that they would send out before
I the
what was the
camp
name of the show?
I remember Can't Kill Yourself.
Yeah,
KY was the big one. I remember seeing some of those
yeah,
videos.
yeah.
Yes, yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was like pre
Jackass.
Jackass.
It
Yeah.
was.
So
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, but so we get into today's topic then.
no, let's just talk about whatever.
Okay, all right, cool. Let's just talk
No,
about
I'm kidding.
Godzilla for another hour.
The power
Um,
arm.
yeah. So what did we decide? Loving
Ridiculous.
language, did I say? Loving language? Yeah.
Loving
Okay, I
language.
got it. So yeah, we're just going to talk a little bit because I don't know, it's something I've been thinking about, and I think I touched on this in a recent episode. I've been watching Shogun a lot recently, and what's really interesting about Shogun, it's a great show anyway. It's excellent. Everybody should check it out. But what's really interesting about it is the translation in that show, and what it does is it kind of shows you conversations that Japanese characters are having with this Englishman, and how the translator. So you see the complete sentence from with in subtitles what the Japanese person's saying, and then how she translates it is so interesting and so telling in terms of like trying to contextualize it for the Englishman in the way that he would understand rather than a straight translation. And I thought that was I think it's such an interesting insight into that show, into like culture and things like that. It just really started making me think about language a lot more recently.
Mhm. It's interesting too, because I'm curious about how your culture supports like multilingual
Yeah.
learning
Oh, yeah, that's it.
and how ours does or
Oh,
does not.
yeah, absolutely. And that's something I want to
Uh-huh.
touch on. And in fact, there's some
Uh-huh.
interesting stuff in terms of I think we've talked a little bit, I've talked to you a little bit about, Gaelic, Irish Gaelic, and there's Scots Gaelic,
Yes.
there's like Welsh
Yes.
Gaelic and things like that.
Yes. Yes.
And so yeah, but yes, we can maybe get into that. I don't know if you have anything you would like to start with.
I just want to know, like what languages do you have experience with?
Yeah. Okay. So in school we studied French, Spanish, and German until I think we did an episode on high school and we talked a little bit about this, but we studied those for 3 years briefly, and then we got to specialize in one until our fifth year of high school, and then if you wanted to follow it through to a higher level, you kind of had the option at that stage. So a little bit of exposure to French and German and a decent amount of Spanish. So say I did 5 years of Spanish, and I have actually done Spanish courses. I've done like a year of Spanish, so I have smattering of Spanish, but like I don't ever use it. So it's deep down there. But I have found with other languages, like at times when it has come up and it's been useful, I have been able to like summon some bits and pieces. I have been able to get by. I the year I spent in Korea, I studied Korean only for about 4 or 5 months, and I remember going back to Korea and some stuff still came back to me. It's
Mhm.
like it's down there somewhere, and whenever I spent 2 years in Taiwan, the final year I went to a Mandarin tutor, and so I studied that for about a year. Um, and like there's still bits and pieces that are like floating around there, and I'd say probably if push came to shove, I could probably navigate some of it. And I hear some Mandarin, people speaking Mandarin, and there's stuff I understand here and there. So I have smatterings of those kind of five languages, I'd say.
How
What
old
about
were
you?
you when
Sorry.
before we move to me and talk
hmm
about me, which I love? How old were you when you started learning languages?
So let me see. High school would have been, well, 11 or 12, I think,
Okay.
I would say.
So
Yeah.
so here we wouldn't start learning a language. Okay, it's very different. I'm gonna kind of go, I guess like I'm gonna go into our culture a little bit.
hmm
So we typically will start in our high school, so around like 14 is
hmm
when and then you pick Latin is a dead language now.
Yeah.
My mom took Latin. I wish they still taught Latin,
So did
but
my
it's
mom.
just, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not. I would have done so much better on my they're called SAT scores
Yep.
if I'd known like root language. Uh, but that's okay. So you would pick one language, and it was either Japanese, Spanish, French, or German. You
hmm
couldn't, that was it. Like you would pick one and you would run with that. So we did that for 3 years, three
hmm
years. And then in college, depending on your major, you might take a language. And I did Spanish again,
hmm
because I was like, haha, I'll just do really
I've
well.
got this.
I've got this, right? But everything that I learned in high school, we went through in one term in
Oh wow.
college. And I was like, oh fuck.
Uh-oh.
So I feel like I missed out on a lot of other it would have been helpful to have had the opportunity to be multilingual
Yeah.
as a kid. But it's just not something that's supported here. And what's interesting is I know just like I know people whose parents have come over or their grandparents came over and from different countries because we're the melting pot, right? And
Hmm.
so a lot of families that have come over, in whatever time, however many, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, would typically not allow their children to speak their native tongue because they wanted them to be American. And so that has been something that I think has been largely, not for all families, but has been largely lost in our culture,
Yeah.
because, this g great desire to really, like, you're American, you're not, where you came from has been a thing. And, also, I will say learning another language is almost like a class issue, where, like, if
Mm,
you have access to education, you have supportive parents, all of that, then you get access to, another language, whereas, people in underserved communities, they don't have the same, uh
resources.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'll also say, and I'm not trying to get myself in trouble here, but,
Yeah.
I think part of our issue is that we assume everyone speaks English,
Yes. Oh,
and why
that is
bother?
a very British thing as well, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So and I will say, and well, we can get into like our travel experiences,
Uh-huh.
but it's because I hope that we don't go the road of having like one language that everyone speaks on the planet.
Yeah.
I'll just say.
I mean, there's something like that is lost if that happens, because there's something so rich about just how other languages express the similar concepts, you know. I think there's some really wonderful, like, I still, and it was in a guidebook, and apparently it doesn't mean exactly this, but whenever I was like in Japan, I had like a sort of phrase book, and one of the phrases was for the English translation was easy tiger, and the word was chotomate. And chotomate kind of means like, wait a minute, just hold on a second. And I just loved it so much that it still sticks in my head. But like, just talking to my Japanese friends sometimes, and like her mom comes and says to her, and she goes, "Oh, chotomate," and I'm like, "Ah, easy tiger." You know, I know that that's not, it's not like set in stone. It's not that one meaning. It's like,
It's got several.
it's got a range of stuff, and like how it's delivered, who it's delivered to, and I think there's something really kind of wonderful learning about that,
Mhm. Um, so do you think of like of all the languages that you speak, do you have one that you're like, that's probably would Spanish be your second language?
Oof. I really, so yeah, probably it's the one that I know best after English, but it is not. I don't really have a good grasp of it. I probably don't have a lot of language. I could probably like, get by if I had to speak Spanish somewhere. I probably could get by in like very kind of halting, like broken Spanish. No, I'd say, but like I don't think it's good in any stretch of the imagination. But I think that like in my life, I have known I think I have found there are some people who just have an affinity for languages that are really have that
Yeah.
their brain works that way. Mine doesn't. I think I can like brute force a lot of things, including languages, if I really try. And I think that's what's happened with Spanish. That's what happened with Mandarin a little bit. Um, but like it just doesn't stay there, or it doesn't like click in as easily as I would like, certainly, so
Mhm.
probably Spanish, but I'd say probably Mandarin is up there as well. But like,
That's so
here,
cool.
saying that, my language skills in both the languages are half-assed at best, but they're both, I'd say, at a similar level.
Mhm.
But like I like my Mandarin skills, so the thing about that, and the thing about that I love so much about the language is that like it's like a tone-based language. So basically, words can be said in four different ways, and depending on how you say them, it's radically alter the meaning. And just getting used to that, like how those tones work, and like, wrapping your mouth, your tongue around those ways of speaking is so difficult whenever you aren't used to it. It's not a way you've had to really think about words at all. But
Mhm.
I love it. It's so fascinating, you know, and it really was such a like I really loved the experience of learning it. Even though as I say, it was a struggle. I did enjoy it.
I would say I speak Spanish all the time.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, and I think part of it, I thought about like I'm speaking it more. I've probably spoken. I spent a lot of time in Mexico
Yeah,
getting
of course.
treatment um a couple of years ago. So like obviously I had to, and it was like a tiny little town where no one spoke English really.
Hmm.
So um, but also because since we've moved, we're so close to the border. It's like 45 minutes from our
Yes.
house.
Hmm.
So like commercials are usually in both languages. Um, advertisements like both languages or in Spanish completely, which is I think it's pretty cool. And what's interesting, did I tell you this? That he went to the library, he's reading Dog Man in
Yes, you
Spanish,
did. No, in
and
Spanish.
he's
Oh no, you
writing,
didn't.
yeah,
Oh, maybe
he
you
bought
did.
it.
I knew about Dogma.
Okay.
I don't think I knew it was in Spanish though. Okay. Hmm.
So he's writing down all the Spanish words
Awesome.
all by himself. And I'm like, okay, like he wants to learn Spanish. So we're going to the library today at 4 o'clock. And there's like free beginner kids Spanish class. So those are the things that I'm starting to like realize are actual opportunities, but it's based on geography. Like
Hmm.
if we lived 20 hours north, that wouldn't be as
Yeah,
accessible.
yeah.
So,
But that's a wonderful opportunity in that way as well. Do you know what I mean? That
yeah,
he's able to do that. So
yeah,
and he clearly has. It sounds like he has an interest in it as well, which is
yeah,
fantastic.
I
Yeah,
know. So just like hopping onto your like, some people are just meant for languages. Like, maybe that's his thing. I don't know.
yeah. That would be awesome.
Being annoying is definitely his thing, but and adorable all at the same
Of
time.
course, of
Um,
course.
so Um,
So
do you have a question?
no, I was just going to ask. So, like, I mean, would you say then, because you asked me about this, would you say Spanish is your sort of the next language that you're next most competent in, or you feel most comfortable with after English? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I
Do
wish because we spend time in French Polynesia,
yeah,
I'm starting to speak more French. I'm
yeah,
starting to speak French.
yeah.
Really poorly. My favorite word is désolé. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then a little bit of Tahitian
Hmm.
because they speak English, Tahitian, and French there. Like every child is just they are born being able to speak all languages.
No, that's lovely. So like, so bit of Spanish, bit of French, then would be the things that you reckon you have access to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I just because it's jumped into my head. So
Obrigada. That's the one word I know in
obrigada.
Portuguese.
Yeah. I So I was playing Guess What Helldivers 2 the other day, and I got into a server, and it was three guys speaking Mandarin, and I just like, and I wasn't on comms, I was just listening to them speak, and it was lovely because like I recognized a decent chunk of what they were, well, not a decent chunk, but like some of what they were saying. But what's so interesting is because you think about how, words are said, people in the English language, like people don't speak people who speak English don't always speak precisely. They speak in slang. They speak in like they slur words, or that becomes a habit and things like that. And just how they were saying certain things and how casually they were, and like how it was really interesting. And then like all of a sudden, one of the guys, I don't know why, maybe he thought I was American. He started saying, "I want to eat hamburger. I want," in English. And he just repeated it a couple of times, and it was very, very funny. But I just, yeah, I just, but I think I just love, I don't know, I just love listening. I just being immersed in language, and even if I don't really understand it, I just find that a very kind of nice experience.
This is totally off topic, but do
Yeah.
people assume because you are a white male that you're American? Like when you
Um,
travel, are they like, or are
yeah,
they
like
like, can they tell you're like European?
I have had people think I'm, no, this is probably not hearing me speak, think I'm Turkish before, which is
Okay.
bizarre.
Okay.
sometimes like Eastern European I've got.
Okay.
But I definitely have an American, before you open your mouth. But then sometimes even because, depending on where I am or like who I've been speaking to, I can go a bit more mid-Atlantic because, especially I think I said before when I was teaching English before, they said, yeah, do not teach English in your Northern Irish accent. It needs to be more Americanized. So and like I do get made fun of sometimes by like people over here because I say certain words that are more Americanized than that
Mhm.
have just kind of like, you know, have just slotted into my vocabulary without me thinking about them. So you do get teased sometimes.
Oh,
Oh,
and you have a
Brandy.
cold.
And I have a cold. Oh, what was me?
So are there, I guess, like, are there dialects for in your country?
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's going to be interesting. I think you're going to have a ball when you hear some of the accents in this country. And I've talked
I'm
about
very
this
excited.
before, that
Uh-huh.
like, I feel like the variation in accents and how strong some of the accents get in this country, like, you will see a shift within 5 miles of where I am that will probably blow your mind in terms of how almost unrecognizable it is. It's kind of crazy. Whereas I think, America, for example, that the spread of that feels further away. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'll maybe get a state, which is, the entirety of Northern Ireland would fit into, that speaks broadly a similar accent, very broadly. Whereas over here, you will get a variation in accent that will blow your mind.
Yeah, you'd
That
have
is,
to you'd have to drive like days or a
yeah,
day in order
yeah,
to find like Texan accent,
yeah. Or
you know.
Boston, which I think is a strong
Yeah,
accent and so on. Yeah, yeah,
like New York,
yeah.
Boston, like the South,
Yes.
like
Hmm.
Kentucky, Texas, the Dakotas.
Yeah.
Like, so it's definitely the more I think about it, like we really do have very different dialects. And like
Yeah.
Michigan, like up, by Canada,
It's
uh it's interesting. But like Vermont, they sound like, Oregonians. I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It
Who knows?
doesn't,
I know the
it
Genesis.
does, I know it doesn't. So I don't quite understand. I'm, I didn't do my homework
Hmm.
because of Doug, our researcher, who is
Hmm.
apparently on
Doug.
break. Mm,
He has been shirking his
he's
duties recently.
totally. But like, I'm curious as to like how the dialects started,
Yeah.
from what region did they come and how long ago and why. And, I'm sure it has to do with everybody coming over on Ellis Island. This is so off topic,
Yeah.
but I've been doing a lot of research because Mike's been trying to get his Polish passport.
Oh, uh-huh.
Uh, so I've been like going down the wormhole of like doing actual research at Ellis Island
Uh-huh.
in all of their databases, trying to find his like all of his genealogy,
Ancestry.
birth certificate, yeah, death certificates, marriage certificates. Um, and
What?
unfortunately, he
Uh-huh.
can't because his ancestors immigrated before 1920
Uh-huh.
when Poland became like they've changed the regions and
Yeah.
Poland became Poland. And so they moved before that.
I see. Okay.
And
Interesting.
so it's just been, but it's been fascinating just to like look at the I've been trying to read Polish,
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, it's a tough one.
right? And they have apps now like Google Translate. You can actually
Yeah,
hold your
it's
phone over the
awesome.
document and then
Hmm.
it like translates for you. It's probably done by AI, whatever. Uh, but just going down like the history wormhole for this has been quite something.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah, truly. And like, I mean, like, and I suppose that like certainly my idea of immigration into the Americas, like, back then there was so much of it. I'm sure there's like a lot of incomplete records, a lot of stuff that's very kind of hard to find.
You
So
saw
yeah,
The Godfather
like Ted See the
when
Godfather,
they changed his last name.
unbelievable.
Or they changed
Uh,
his name. He was from Corleone, so they didn't get that was his last name.
yeah, wild.
So that's fact.
It is very much so. Um, the so like one of the things. Well, I mean, I suppose the other thing to touch on upon it would be um so whenever I went to Korea, and that's where I first started teaching English. That was the first time I did it. I was like, oh shit, I have to relearn English. I have to relearn a lot of the rules because,
Interesting.
whenever you speak the
Like we know
language,
what we speak, but we
yeah,
don't know why. Yeah.
exactly. And there's stuff that I did know, and I'd say I hope I would say I probably knew more than sort of the average person because I studied English certainly until like quite a high level, but a lot of it was gone, and I had to like sit down and really kind of relearn the building blocks that I would be teaching these kids because they would have questions for me, and I would be like, so I didn't want to be put in that position particularly, like they'd be like, well, you speak this language, how do you not know? But I think it's probably true for a lot of native speakers in terms of, the building blocks. A lot of the building blocks they probably don't have a lot of an idea about. They just know what works, how to put sentences together. It's
It's
kind of interesting.
embarrassing. I can actually speak to this because I have children who are learning how to read and write
Mm,
right now. And they'll be like, why does this word have four meanings? And I'll be like, I don't
yeah.
know. It's just kind of some words do. Like that's literally my answer.
I remember even like some of the kids that I was teaching in Korea, like going like looking at
Sti-
read and read, and they're like, it's this teacher, it's the same word. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. It
Yeah.
is the same
Yeah.
word.
My answer is like, it's just weird. That's why I don't, it is such a smashing of like different, you find the root, right? And a lot of it is based
Yeah.
on European and Spanish words.
Yeah.
So it doesn't all make sense because it's, I don't know. It's just
It,
everything shoved in there.
it really is. It's like the connection, or it was what is it? It's like these are the exceptions the word I was looking for. So basically, like a lot of the times in these books they would be like, here is the rule, and they'd be like, okay, we get it, and then here's the list of exceptions, and they'd be like, it's so long, and I'm like, I know. I'm sorry. That's, I mean, because like, English is certainly, there's been so many influences from so many different languages and stuff like that that have kind of went into what it is currently. So there's so many kind of weird exceptions and rules and stuff like that in this language. So it can be hard to explain to somebody. I think, and I've had quite a few friends who English isn't their native language, and it sounds like it can be to understand English completely can be quite a challenge just because it is so
I've heard
wide.
it's stated that it's the hardest language to
Yeah,
learn. And I don't know how true that is,
it seems like it's
but
up there.
I can't imagine,
I'm so
especially
grateful.
with slang. I am too.
Yeah,
Um, I can't imagine trying to learn it because um even raising native speakers, it's so confusing.
yeah.
It's so confusing.
And even like how it's used in this country compared to America, for example, it's so
You
wildly
say
different.
words and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
Like
it's
the
nuts.
slang episode, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense
No.
at all. You can shorten it. You literally shorten like seven words into like
I
four letters.
know. It's quite funny.
I'm still mad you won that round. But so I guess do you think that language has helped build different community for you?
um, that's a good question. I mean, had I stayed here, probably not, but like because I kind of traveled a bit, then definitely that has been a good way to kind of like make connections with like other foreigners in these countries, and also make connections with people that actually live there. I mean,
Mhm.
it has been my experience by and large that whenever like I was in Taiwan, for example, and I started speaking Mandarin, like so many like so many Taiwanese people were just like, no, I'll speak to you in English. You murdering our language like this. And I'm like, okay, I understand. Um, but even that's fun. Do you know what I mean? It's like you make an attempt and people like go, no, 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 I'll speak English to you. It's like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it has, but I don't think, well, one of my best friends, I told her about before, she's Japanese, and like all too often she will send me like English phrases or English words. I wish I thought of some examples for this. And she'd be like, what does this mean? And a lot of times you're like, oh, this is so difficult because I'm explaining it to you in English, and her English is good, but like I still have to explain a fairly complex idea, and I have to use words that I already know that you know. Because if I throw in extra words that you don't know, then that will be more explaining that needs to be done. So that's kind of like a challenge. I do quite like it, and I think talking to her about this, which has been constant over like the years of our sort of friendship, has really helped me improve how I relay those ideas. She's always saying that I'm like a good English teacher, and I'm like, yes, finally, years later, I got there.
Someone who's not paying you is
As long as
saying
I
this.
pay me, like, yeah, I'm just free a freebie. Yeah.
Huh.
What about you?
I think so. I think, I really make an effort, even if I butcher it, to try and learn a few key phrases in every place I go.
Hmm.
And um, I also think it allows you it's what's interesting is like I'll be in a taxi, and the taxi driver is like, "Oh, you speak English?" And I'll be like, "Yes." And he'll be like, "I want to work on my English." And I'll be like, "I want to work on my Spanish."
Yeah.
And so that will be our way of really communicating, on a 45-minute drive or whatever. So I love those interactions. And then usually that cab driver's like, if you need to buzz around, here's my card and
Yeah.
I'll take you wherever you need to go. And then I've got a friend for the week.
Yeah.
Um, so in those ways, um, I've made connections in terms of community. I think that just being open to trying
Yeah.
has given me access, instead of just like bulldozing my way through and being like, I'm 11, I speak American, right?
Yeah.
Which I know that there's a travel stigma.
Yes.
And I try not to fall into that.
That is true of British people as well.
Okay. Um, so it has allowed me, we've got friends in Maria that, if I there's an absolute language barrier. They do not speak English, so we are like butchering our way through French, lots of like hand gestures, but like how lovely is that we get to
Yeah.
experience that. They're like the kids' other grandparents. They take care of us, we take care of them. They help us celebrate Christmas every year, like it's a whole thing. And we don't really, they try to speak, and we try to speak. Mike speaks French much better than I do.
Hmm.
Um, but it's still one of my favorite parts of the year, just being
Yes.
around them.
And yes, and I think there's something, yeah, there, and as long as you're kind of like you say, open to that, open to like, because like any sort of learning process involves a large period of time living in ignorance, right? And as long as you're not embarrassed about that and you
Yes,
kind of enjoy the fun of that, it's great.
yes.
And it's like, who cares if you get things wrong? You're trying, that's
What
what
did you
matters.
say? Can you say
Oh
that again?
no.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna listen back.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah. I think
Anything, something, something, there's a
uh
period of ignorance. I'm
yes.
gonna I'm gonna write it down.
Okay.
That's gonna go
Okay.
on a t-shirt.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, let's do it.
But
Okay, I
you're
like it.
absolutely
Yeah.
right. There is a period of ignorance. There's a period of like putting yourself in a really vulnerable situation where you're like, I'm so out of my comfort zone, but I'm gonna give it a go.
Yes. I I think in my experience, and this is getting away from language, but I think like as people get older, generally speaking, people want less to live in that period of ignorance. Whereas like it's one of the reasons why I think I don't care if I don't want to be ignorant, as in I don't want to be rude to people, but I don't care if I look like an idiot, whatever.
Good thing.
Yeah, exactly. I know, thank God. Uh, but like, do you know what I mean? Because it's like if it's getting me to a place that I want to be, or it's getting me to experience that I want to have, then so what? It's like, it's get past your ego in that regard. I think it's just not
Mhm.
worth it if it stops you from, having a go at something.
I also think language is different. I think language is also not just words.
Yeah, it's true. So true. Uh,
You know, there's a lot that you can um, connect on and communicate with, just like gestures and
Yes.
pointing, and it's easy to fall into like the Google Translate hole. But when you don't have cell service,
You just have to get by. Yeah,
you
yeah,
just
yeah.
have to get by, and that's a reality.
Yeah,
That
it's true.
you don't have cell service everywhere, and I am in that position more than I think about, honestly. So um
It
I think it's important to I was doing a little bit of or Doug sent me a link to
good
something,
man.
but it was like the more you practice being in that uncomfortable language space, or trying,
Yep.
like, you're like connecting different neurons.
Yeah.
It shows people who retire, like the outcomes of their retirement life, like how long they live, actually has to do with like the travel and the trying and the learning of the
Yeah.
languages, and like, so it's like it's only good stuff, really.
I agree completely.
Like, why not try?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very much so. Um, yeah, no, I think you're bang on there. I like that a lot. Um, I there was a thing. Oh yeah, so I mean, I was going to talk a little bit. I think I talked about it at the third sort of the episode a little bit about like Irish and like Gaelic and things like that. Like and it's one of the things, and I'm not going to go into it too much, but like it's kind of like weaponized a little bit in this country in terms of the whole sort of, opposing Protestant Catholic side of things, which really sucks. And it feels like sort of Irish is spoken less and less. I know there are in the south of Ireland, there's some villages that do speak almost exclusively Gaelic, which I think is pretty awesome. And I know that like there are so like all the signs in Ireland are in both Gaelic and English, which I think is great as well. Um, but like it's up here because it's seen as such a like polarizing thing, and it's been weaponized in terms of like political parties and stuff like that. So it's kind of become problematic. So there's like so the town I live in has a reputation as being predominantly Protestant in a sort of, not a great way. I've lived here a decent chunk of my life, and it was certainly worse when I was a kid, but honestly, it's fine now. People are friendly. It's much more of a mixed community than it used to be, but there still is, because of its, history, there is still a hardcore bunch of people who still kind of feel a certain way. So you sometimes get um, stickers put around lampposts and things like that. And one of the ones recently was I'll paraphrase this as best I can, but every sort of word of Irish Gaelic is a bullet in the gun against the cause of our Ulster loyalism, basically. And it was like, that is so inflammatory and insane that you think that these people expressing their heritage is is against you. That's so it's so arrogant to be perfectly honest, But like, let people have their culture. It doesn't do you any harm at all, So it's just a bit upsetting. But again, I'm not going to go into that too much because it's a bit of a hot button topic. Um, but I just think it's such a shame because I feel like we, by just like you said, it'd be terrible if if this world moved to a point where we're all speaking the same language. There's something so rich and beautiful about having access to all these other languages and the cultures that they bring that it would be such a loss for us to homogenize down into like one tongue. It really would be.
Hmm. Hmm. Yay, languages. We love
Yay,
you.
languages, they rule. Woohoo. Oh, that reminds me. I keep talking to you just for good Irish. I think I've told you about it before, but you should check out the guard. I told you about the guard before.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a great one because it's got some Irish language stuff in it as well, and I think it's such a great cultural touchstone, and I think it's very funny as well. But it's a lovely one.
I'll watch it
So
this
what's the
week.
guard, everyone?
Yes. I need to.
Yeah.
Um, okay, last question.
Mhm.
Do you have a like an experience where you messed up something speaking someone else's
Um,
language and you were like, "Oh."
I don't think so. I think I I can't remember any ones where I've certainly got in trouble. Like, I mean, I think most of the time I can maybe think of a few times like drunkenly I've been trying attempting to say
Yeah.
stuff, and people
Yeah.
are just, but people are just fairly have been fairly good natured about it and kind of understand what I'm trying to do. So I've been lucky, but and so nothing, nothing terrible, thankfully. Do you have any?
That's good. Nothing terrible, but like I do have a memory of being, I think it was in Acapulco,
Hmm.
and I was at the grocery store, and instead of saying, "Where is the bathroom?" I was asking the guy, like, "How do I go to the bathroom?"
That's an amazing one.
Like anatomically.
I love it. So good.
And he was just like horrified. And I was, and then I realized, like, oh no, like, where's the bathroom? But yeah,
That's great.
so that's
I like that one a lot.
typical me.
That's a good, an amazing one. Yeah, that's a good way to end that chat. And you know, we'd love to hear other people's feedback on this stuff always, or
Mhm.
their experiences with the language. And like, certainly have a lot of friends and friends I know that listen to this podcast who I was in Korea with and things like that. I know they have more exposure and more connection to the language that I did. So definitely love to hear their thoughts. But yeah, I think it's just yeah, I think it's super cool. It's something I would like. It's one of these things that's like it's like I really would love to know a language intimately one day before I die. Same way I'd love to like learn an instrument properly before I die. So, but if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll see what happens. But
You never played any instruments?
I like the recorder. If you know what the recorder is,
Okay,
it's like a flute.
I do. That's it. Everybody starts there,
Yeah, but like
but it's a
that's
real
about it.
instrument.
It is a real instrument,
Okay.
thankfully. But that's about it, really. Unfortunately,
Okay.
but I plan I will eventually. I've tried guitar a couple of times and
It's
it's
hard.
really hard.
I
Um,
can't strum,
no.
even on a ukulele. I just don't have the strumming rhythm.
I've been told to try like a bass guitar instead, or there
Mm,
is a club that meets in Carrick that does there's a ukulele, ukulele
yep.
club, and I might
Yep.
there's unfortunately the same night as my choir, but I want to maybe start going to that and see if I can pick up, the uke. So we'll see what happens. I'll get there
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah. That's good.
I, my
That's a
voice
good
is my
gateway.
my voice is my instrument, right?
It's that's not inaccurate.
That's true. But yeah. So do you have any other final thoughts before we move on to our
I don't
end
think
section?
so. I
Okay.
don't think so. This is interesting.
It
I
was.
didn't know. I'm gonna read a little bit more about Gaelic and
Mm,
what's going on there
yeah, no, it's
to
interesting.
educate myself
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
that's what I like to do.
Hell yeah. So yeah, so then as we wrap things up, Beth, I ask you the question that we both love. What's been bringing you joy this week?
Um, so
Do you want me to go first?
no, I'll go.
Okay.
Um, I'm just getting uh quite a few of my friends are it's interesting. It's like sometimes like all my friends are like having hard times and it's like, oh, they're all like blooming and doing
Hmm.
amazing things. So I've been getting a lot of texts lately of just like good things that are happening for the people that I love. So I'm just
That's great.
excited and happy for the people that I like. I wish that, everyone does well and um
Yes, me too.
so yeah,
Yep.
so that's making me happy and bringing me joy. And also we're watching Fallout.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
So good.
Yeah, I've seen two episodes.
I never played the game, so this is all like just story for me.
The games are sort of like a bit like of a blank slate in terms of the character and stuff anyway, so it's kind of just doing its own thing. I mean, it's like a lot of the stuff is familiar, but like they're charting their own path, and I've seen two episodes and I'm really liking it so far.
Yeah, same. We watched two episodes and I was like, I could just this let's just keep going with this.
Yeah,
So and also I really love apocalyptic stuff in
yeah.
general. Um
It's a it's a
it's
cool
fascinating.
it's a cool apocalyptic world because it's kind of based on the foundation of like an alternative sort of 50s or 60s where we were like slightly more technologically advanced as well. So it's like it's got all these like really kind of interesting quirks. The music, which was the music that was it's a lot of the music was stuff that was in the game, is all that sort of like great old time sort of
Yes.
sound, which I really love. I just hearing that in the first few episodes, I was like, it feels so refreshing because so few shows use things like that, use those sorts of music, that sort of music. So it's been
Hmm.
it's been really nice in that regard.
Hmm. I grew up, but like my parents would play that kind of stuff. So I'm like, Mike's like, stop singing the words. And like, don't you want to know that I know them all? He's like, we so
No,
yeah,
I'm
I
trying to
know.
listen.
I know. They sing
Um,
at him and explain the Godfather. What's been bringing you joy?
and so I actually wrote down a few that I mean
Okay.
I'm gonna save them because for the weeks that I struggle. Um, so one of so I've been really enjoying. There's an X-Men cartoon that's just been come out. So it is a
I saw that.
continuation of the X-Men show from the 90s.
Mhm.
It's really good. I
Really?
was very skeptical. Yeah, it's really well put together. It's like really kind of, and the old show was a bit like this, very earnest and very sort of, quite complex in ways, and it is really following that path. It's really kind of doing some interesting things with the characters, and going and like retelling some really kind of interesting stories from the comics. So it's really fantastic so far, and it just makes me so happy to kind of see those characters again because they kind of meant so much to me as a kid. So there is two things from that show. So the thing that really, I think I might have told you about this before, probably off pod. What I loved most about that show was, so Gambit is from New Orleans, right? And he's got the worst New Orleans accent ever. Like it's pure trash. So there's two quotes from the original 90s cartoon that stuck with me and are still stick with me to this day. And one was, he saw Wolverine like in a sewer. Wolverine pops up and he goes, "Wolverine, there you are." And my favorite, which is, "Discard, remember it." Which was, he threw a card at somebody, and from now on, and I swear to like a couple of years ago, before the reboot was announced, if I'm playing a board game and it calls for somebody like discard a
To
card, and
discard.
they'll say the word discard, and under my breath I'll go, "Remember it."
Right.
To this day. And like friends are waiting for it from me because they just go, "I can't help myself." So good. So yeah, bringing me lots of joy, taking me back to my youth.
That's very good. I love it when you do, I love it when you do like other accents. Like the Monty Burns,
Oh
the "You
yeah.
want a pint?" I, I was doing
No.
editing and like putting that up on YouTube, and I'm like, I kept rewinding and laughing.
Yeah, it's good.
That brings me joy.
It kind of like I just drop them now and again. People are like, "Whoa, what happened?"
You're good. It's
It's
good.
good. I like it. It's fun.
You're a
Good.
clever mimic.
Thanks.
Uh,
But yeah, so I think that's it for now, folks. So, as always, if you can subscribe, like any of our videos, or or whatever your platform of choice is, we would certainly appreciate it. But yeah, Beth, do you have anything else before we want to wrap things up?
I don't think so. I don't think
I
so.
should probably write out an end sort of thing about subscribing and liking and stuff like that, shouldn't I? I'll do it some other
Nah,
day.
just no.
Just wing it as
Go
always.
to bendypodcast.com,
Yeah,
y'all.
pennypodcast.com.
Find
Yeah.
us on all the things.
Hmm.
Tell your friends about us if you
Yep.
think that this is worth two friends chatting
Yep.
across
Yep.
the pond.
I had some nice feedback from a friend recently. He says like how like earnest and stuff, and how like refreshingly earnest our podcast was, and I was like, I really quite like that, and so I think there's something quite nice about that. So yeah.
It's funny, just like talking to you, like literally, this is just how we talk to each other.
Hmm.
Because we
It's
were
true.
talking about all the things, like when we hopped on, and then I was like, oh, I just want to talk about them all again
Yeah,
because this is just how we talk.
it's true.
So
So true. So true. So yeah.
it's
So
nice not having to try very hard.
I know it really is. It's lovely.
Minimum effort. Yay.
Yeah, maximum fun. But yes, right. Okay. That was a very long outro. But sorry,
Yeah.
it was all
Yes.
important. So as
Sort of.
always, yeah, sort of important else, which is the most important. So as always, we would like to remind you to stay
Bendy.
bendy.
My range
That's
is
good.
off
And just,
today.
I'd like to remind everybody that I have a cold, so my stay bendy was compromised there. So just, allow me some mistakes.
So you're not saying I can win today?
No, you cannot
Mine was a
possibly
bet.
not. How dare you? In my condition, Beth?
Sorry.
Right, bye. We love you.
Bye.
Bye, bye,
Love you.
bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Nice, that was good.
That was good.
That was a nice chat. It was good. That
That
went
was
well.
great. I had no idea that your language, like your original language, was so polarized. I get it. It makes sense. We
I
have
know.
nothing like that here.
Yeah, it's so
It's
like,
more like I hate it when like my aunt and uncle that live in New Jersey were like posting something on Facebook about
ugh.
how they hate it when people like commercials are in Spanish and like speak the country's language, and I'm just like, oh my God,
So yeah, so like
orf.
my hold on.